rugged wilderness, primitive and beautiful. In 1954, the silence of the forest was broken by prospectors in search of a new prize, uranium, the mineral whose mysterious power was the key to a new age. With Geiger counter and diamond drill, with pick and shovel and dynamite, they found it. Found it in greater quantities than had ever been known. Thus began one of the greatest mining enterprises of all time. An enterprise, or a whole group of enterprises, destined to change this sylvan spot into one of the busiest areas in Canada. A road, a rutted, twisting, tortuous road, was slashed out through the bush and muskeg. Men, thousands of men, speaking a score of languages and versed in 100 trades, poured into the area. Mine shafts were collared and sunk deeper and deeper into the solid rock. Head frames were erected on a dozen sites. How were these thousands of men to be housed and fed in an area which had never before been called upon to support more than a few nomads? Miners are family men. Home life means as much to them as it means to men anywhere. It was obvious from the start that extraordinary measures must be taken if a permanent workforce was to be maintained at the Elliot Lake mines. The situation was new only in degree. Both government and industry had learned that tremendous problems could arise in such a situation. Here was an unorganized territory with no local government to guide the vast industrial complex that was springing up at a rate which could scarcely have been foreseen. With the development of the mines, a great labor force surged into the country, bringing pressing demands for schools, recreation facilities, police and fire protection, transportation, sewer and water facilities, and dozens of other requirements. There could be no delay. Only speedy and positive action could create logical direction for the massive population pressures, which, already intense, were to become still greater in the months ahead. Never was there a clearer demonstration of the need for government and industry to coordinate their programs of area development if the thousands of people who were swarming into the area were to have any type of satisfactory environment. This was not Ontario's first venture in this sort of cooperation between government and industry. A year or so earlier, the same problem had arisen in the Manitouwadge area north of Lake Superior. There, government and the mining industry had cooperated in the planning and building of a town site. While Manitouwadge is a small community of approximately 2,000 people, the lessons in organization and development learned there were to prove most valuable now in the Elliot Lake uranium field. The Ontario government had set up special committees to deal with the Manitouwadge program. Fortunately, they were still in existence and prepared to bring their experience to bear on the Elliot Lake problem. The government ministers and senior officials of the departments of lands and forests, of municipal affairs, of planning and development, and of mines, who formed the policy and administrative town site committees, went to work. The Elliot Lake project posed many problems. Which of the mines would carry their development right through to production? How big would they be, and what labor force would be required to man them? What would be the composition of this labor force in terms of family status, age groups, ethnic backgrounds? What total population could be expected to descend on the area? What types of housing accommodation would be needed, and how soon? What volumes of water would be required for industrial and domestic use, and where could suitable sources be found and developed? These and a great many other questions were asked in an effort to define the nature of the problem and to point the way to the most effective method of meeting the anticipated needs of the incoming population. Was short, and even now in 1955 the need for permanent housing, commercial and serviced industrial sites was already critical. After weighing all the factors, the planners calculated that within 7 years the population requiring accommodation would be between 20 and 30,000. Such a rate of growth was abnormal for any community, anywhere, at any time. Only once or twice before in Canada's history had anything like it occurred. Foremost in the minds of those directly concerned in the development was the determination that the completed Elliot Lake would look like this, a planned community, rather than like this. The first and obvious step was to select the site on which the community was to rise. An area of about 2,000 acres would be required for housing alone, and it was not going to be easy to find it in this land of steep slopes, great expanses of rock outcrops, muskeg, and complex drainage patterns. This was rugged country. It was mining country. And to add to the difficulty, the town site selected must be so located that it could serve as the focal point for all the mines of the area. To find a suitable site, the Ontario government initiated intensive air photo analysis and ground survey of natural features over a wide area. Soils, geology, groundwater, topography, drainage, and water resources were all subjected to searching. Finally, after an extensive examination of several hundred square miles, the choice was made. At a spot where the road wound between two scenic lakes, the town of Elliot Lake was to arise. Scenically, it was an ideal location, but to the planners and engineers responsible for the design and installation of water and sewer lines, roads, and other services, it was to prove something of a nightmare. Still, it was the most workable piece of ground in the whole territory. Now the planners and engineers set to work in earnest to produce detailed plans for residential, commercial, and industrial developments, attempting to catch up with the demands being created by the dynamic mining activities. Some business establishments were needed immediately to serve the thousands of workers who were already in the area. And so a temporary commercial area was established along the main road. Here, a grocery, drugstore, a restaurant, a hardware store, a dry cleaning establishment, and other small essential businesses were authorized. None was pretentious, and authority to operate was conditional upon their agreement to move just as soon as the permanent commercial center was ready for them. Now, the province had to decide what would be the best form of local government. In this unusual situation, with a rapidly expanding and mobile population, there was immediate need for organized action. Late in 1955, the Ontario Municipal Board created the Improvement District of Elliot Lake. The municipality so formed was to cover nearly 400 square miles, an area larger than metropolitan Toronto. The municipality contained all the mines, the town site itself, and sufficient land around the town site to exclude uncontrolled and unserviced fringe developments, so characteristic of many other communities. A three-man board of trustees was appointed by the government to act under the supervision of the Department of Municipal Affairs as the local governing body. Sufficient land for the proposed town site was available from the Crown. Because of the irregularity of the terrain and disposition of bedrock, it was found necessary to split the town site into two roughly equal parts, one immediately west of the highway and the other 3 miles farther west. The eastern town site was to consist of 4 residential neighborhoods, a central commercial area, 2 industrial areas. The western area would be composed of 4 residential neighborhoods and a 3rd industrial area. The 2 areas together should be capable of accommodating up to 30,000 people. Each residential neighborhood was designed to include the entire range of uses normally considered necessary in a small residential community. Primary school facilities, a small shopping area, recreational facilities, churches, and a variety of residential accommodations, all conveniently and safely related to each other. With the wide diversification of natural features in the town site, adequate land was retained in its natural form for recreational development. In March 1956, the first subdivision plan was completed, and residential lots were immediately made available for public purchase. As part of its basic policy for the sale of lots, the government was determined to eliminate excessive speculation in land or any other activity which might prevent its most effective use. No limit was placed on the number of people or the classes of business permitted to establish in the town site. Serviced residential lots were sold by the municipality at less than half the actual cost of supplying services to them. The average price paid for such a lot was about $750, well within the financial scope of anyone planning to build his own home. All residential lot sales were open to the public. All commercial and industrial lot sales were by public auction, subject only to municipal zoning and building standards. Land speculation, a provision was written into sales agreements that building must be well advanced within 1 year. Failure to comply meant that the lot would revert to the municipality and the purchaser would lose his deposit. In the case of the commercial lots put up for auction, the reserve bid was designed to cover the whole cost of service installations. These commercial lots brought from $750 to $25,000 per lot. To January 1959, the municipality had sold about 2,000 residential properties, several hundred commercial and serviced industrial lots, for a total of some $2.5 million. This income was used to cover part of the capital costs incurred in providing services to the community. In 1956, the first residential area was opened up at the northern end of the town site. Properties were available to all comers. But as could be expected in that hectic year of mine development, the mining companies were the principal purchasers. They needed the lots immediately to house their early permanent employees, to whom they were offered for sale on easy rental payment terms. As one by one the construction crews finished their work and left the district, there was an increase in the percentage of lots purchased by private individuals, storekeepers, professional people, and miners who preferred to build their own homes rather than purchase through their companies.
Meanwhile, the crash building program at the mine was continuing. At the town site, houses were going up in one area, sewerage and water services and roads were being installed in another, and detailed plans for still others were coming off the drawing boards. The whole district was the scene of enormous activity, but still it was impossible to keep up with the demand for homes. So hundreds of miners and construction workers were finding their own solution to the housing problem. Temporary shacks were thrown up wherever a level spot of ground could be found. Trailers, mobile homes, were brought into the area. At first singly, then in dozens, and finally by the hundred, until they were spotted all along the road and in clearings in the bush. The lack of public water supply and proper sewage disposal facilities soon became a very real threat to the health of the whole community. 3 years later, the young municipality had not wholly solved the problem posed by the influx of these cabin and trailer dwellers. The hazard to health was the major concern, but it was compounded by the difficulty of providing police and fire protection and the cost of transporting the widely scattered pupils to schools in the town site. In an attempt to cope with the problem, a trailer park was established at the north end of the town site and equipped with hydro, water, and sewer services. Later, other trailer parks were set up, and standards were established for the maintenance of private trailer camps. The cost of constructing and maintaining these municipal trailer parks soon became a serious drain on the economy of the infant municipality. In spite of the recognized need for housing, the authorities were obliged, for the sake of safety, to take legal steps to remove unauthorized and dangerous housing from the improvement district. The financing of a project of the magnitude of the Elliot Lake community brought about some unusual situations that required unusual solutions. In the first 3 years, the essential municipal services called for the expenditure of some $14 million. And this did not include the many more millions spent by the mining companies in their house building programs, and the capital outlay of individuals and other companies on residential, commercial, and industrial properties. The normal sources of municipal income were lacking in this development, and the prospect of opening up a completely new town without benefit of municipal tax income was one that could well daunt its sponsors. So, during this first period of fast and heavy spending for capital works, virtually the only municipal income available came from the sale of townsite lands and from the municipal debentures which were taken up by the provincial government. The municipal coffers gained $12 million from the debentures and another $2,350,000 from the sale of lands. Life in the early days of Elliot Lake was not easy, even for those fortunate enough to get possession of the first completed houses.
In the spring and fall, mud was the all-pervasive element, as bulldozers and heavy trucks churned up the surface where roads and houses were to be. In the summer, the pall of dust spread by the same activity was a choking blanket that turned noonday sun into a crimson ball. With such business establishments as they were at the start worked under rare difficulties. The telephone exchange was operated from a trailer, and for a time, one public call box served the entire community, and a long-distance call might take 3 or 4 hours to complete. The first 2 banks to open branches in Elliot Lake also operated from trailers in this pioneer town of the 20th century. When the first school in the town site opened its doors in September 1955, there were 3 teachers and 6 pupils. Just 1 year later, 11 teachers were responsible for the education of 350 pupils on a 2-shift basis. Elliot Lake could not stand still, could not even pause to catch its breath. Single houses, streets of houses, whole neighborhoods. A hotel. A hospital. A big department store. Another hotel. A food market. A complete business area which, with its pedestrian ways and parking facilities, would be a credit to any city in the land. All these came into being. The population soared to 7,000 in July 1955. At the beginning of 1959, about 23,000 people were permanent residents within the improvement district. 10 new and modern schools with approximately 3,400 pupils served the educational needs of the community. Altogether, 6 religious denominations now hold services of worship in churches which their members have built. Elliot Lake, whose people seriously needed recreational facilities in the community's early formative stages, now has them in abundance. Social clubs, summer sports, winter sports, hunting, fishing, swimming, music, art, all are available. The Collins Community Center, the gift of 2 of the founders of the original uranium boom. Frank Jubin, the prospector geologist who proved up the first discovery, and Joseph Hirshhorn, a genius in mine financing, whose faith in Jubin's judgment made the development possible. The original road had never been intended to be more than a stopgap. And in 1956, the Ontario Department of Highways began construction of a permanent road. Now, a broad paved highway links Elliot Lake and its mines to the outer world. Thus, Elliot Lake was born. It is more than a city. It is the home of 25,000 people living in a community which only 5 years ago was undreamed of. A community with many problems, but a community which has, in a short span of time, developed a spirit to find a way around these problems. It is the uranium capital of the world. The hope and aspiration of all who see in atomic power the key to a new age. It is a jewel set in a leafy forest, the base each year for an increasing number of sportsmen, nature lovers, and visitors who seek rest or adventure in the unspoiled heart of Ontario's Northland. fruit of a boldly conceived experiment in community planning. An experiment that will continue to bear fruit when other communities come into being, as a result of the continuing development of Northern Ontario's still untapped resources. This is Elliot Lake, the city in the forest.